who ended up coming over to the Hillary Clinton side in the primaries and then voted for Hillary Clinton at the end of the primaries. So I'm sort of in the opposite camp in that I found her campaign so compelling that I left the Sanders campaign. But I don't think that Sanders was necessarily any more damaging to her than any other primary candidate is to a general election candidate. That's kind of the reason why primaries are so rough, because you fight each other for the base, and then you've already done damage to the other person with your attacks, and then they have to go into the general with those millstones around their necks. So that claim I didn't find quite as persuasive.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I definitely think that the her claim about the Comey letter was incredibly persuasive. I also think this is backed up. I mean, if you can read Nate Silver on it, you can look at the stats, you can look at the numbers. It's just really hard to see that there wasn't a, all it took was a sliver of points to change it, and that did it. And I think that ultimately, was sort of I mean, it also, like, the reason she lost in a grander scheme was because this country is really racist and really sexist, and we're in this really bad place right now culturally. But what actually tipped the scales from her not winning to her winning right there at the end was the Comey letter.
Yeah, I agree. I found so much of what she said sort of compelling and viable because of how much research she clearly put into all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself wondering how many research assistants she had, or maybe she did it all herself. I mean, I don't know, but just the sheer number of sources that she cites on all of this, you can't help but go, okay, I'm with you. That this makes sense, that all of this really had an impact on the election. And I mean, there's so much that goes into it, but, like you're saying, it's such a small margin of victory and not a victory at all for Trump in terms of the popular vote, that anything makes a difference, right? I mean, like the way a butterfly flapped its wings on June 22nd or whatever. So I think there's really so much there. And, you could make a case for almost anything. I think Nate Silver had some article along the way where he basically said that same thing. Like, well, it could have been any of these 10 million different factors.
Yeah.
Choose which one you want to claim.
Yeah. His big statement is always, I think I said it last time, it takes a lot of things for a plane to crash, right? It's never just one item.
Yes. This is the issue, though, is, coming out of this is, there are all these reasons that went into why she lost, right? Without a doubt. And without one of them, maybe she doesn't lose, even if there's, take one of the kind of, issues kind of pre-Comey letter, and maybe the Comey letter, she can even overcome that at the end. It had a kind of death by 1,000 cuts kind of feel to it. I think the issue might be, going forward, which are the things that are the most productive to address? I don't know, how much is it important to address how the FBI interacts with political campaigns? This was such a departure from previous, in fact, a departure from what they were doing with the investigation into collusion with Russian governmental officials. They didn't mention it because it was too close. It would potentially interfere with people making their decisions. So, they were making conflicting decisions. So I don't know, whether that's something that needs to be addressed going forward. But the issue of sexism and the issue of the role of social media and the ways in which that is a place that we have not, that's a kind of Wild West area, that might be a more important place to put our focus in terms of going forward.
And traditional media, for that matter.
Yeah.
Speaking of sexism, Clinton discusses sexism pretty extensively in the book. Some of the ways that it played a role in her defeat. and some of the ways in which it had played a role in her life. So, have you seen or experienced any of the phenomena that she talks about in your own life, either watching her campaign or having it directed at you?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this in terms of whether I've experienced it in my own life. And I think that part of the reason that I was one of these people who sort of thought sexism was a thing of the past, at least intellectually thought that, was that I don't think I have experienced it that much in my personal life. I mean, I'm sure it's there. I'm sure it's sort of at root, like job offers I've had, I've never argued the salary. I've just been like, okay, that sounds good to me, and so of course there's things going on there. But, I think I haven't experienced it to the extent that other people have. And so I was in this sort of mind space of thinking prior to the election, or at least prior to the campaign season starting, that, maybe we didn't have that much sexism. I go by my maiden name and I've never had any pushback at all about it. I am a boss and I've never had anybody question that, and so in a lot of areas of my life, I've been, I guess, extremely privileged and lucky that I have not faced it. But it's clear that it's going on, and it's clear that it's going on, obviously in her campaign. But I think, too, looking at the way that people like Elizabeth Warren have been treated, there's obviously still sexism in politics. And it's not even hidden. It's just so blatant right now, to have Elizabeth Warren stand up and try to read Coretta Scott King's letter and be told she has to sit down and be quiet. And then a man, is allowed to stand up and say it. I mean, it's just so blatant.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a similar place. I've mostly been a kind of freelancer for a lot of my life, and before that, I worked in a company with all women. And so I feel like I've only sort of experienced like the super blatant, like disgusting kinds of sexism, like the leers,
Mm-hmm.
or it's been so subtle that I didn't notice it, which may be more my problem than anything else. But I haven't like wondered why some man was making more than me, or wondered why a guy got an assignment that I didn't get, or what, that has never happened to me. But I do live in the deep South, and am from the sort of an ultra liberal town in the Northeast. Um, so I feel like I've seen it sort of societally some, and it is different but more present here. But yeah, I guess I sort of hoped it was gone too, or thought it was gone, or I mean, who knows how much of this I think I internalized a lot of it. I know that when I came into the primary season, I did not like Hillary Clinton, which is, I think, a thing that a lot of people said, and I just didn't like her. And I actually had to do some reckoning with myself, like, what do you mean you don't like her? Like, what don't you like about her? And I think I guess technically a millennial. I'm an old millennial, um, the very oldest of the millennials, and but we were raised on a steady diet of Hillary Clinton hate. I mean, we came up when we were kids in the 90s, like I don't remember my father ever saying anything specifically, but definitely like my uncles would sort of, oh, her, Hillary, her, and they were just like sort of little comments about how she was, such a, she was mean, she was harsh, she was cold, she was a lesbian, she was, because, oh my gosh, how could there be any other such joke to make? But that's what it was. It was this steady diet of like rumors and snide remarks, and even from, my family's mostly sort of old style Union Democrats, but Democrats, they liked Bill, but
Mm-hmm.
Hillary was like this thing, that she was this joke, and I think I internalized a lot of it, and not just with her, but just in general. I mean, I can't help but wonder like how much of that was really in me, and I think I still probably have work to do.
Going through the campaign, and I was a fan of before. It wasn't I came into it not liking her, but that was a hard thing to hold on to throughout the campaign, right? It just felt like you were being pushed into trying, like to step back and say, no, actually, I don't believe that. Or I have this kind of memory of at various points in the campaign kind of going, wait, take a step back, think about, why are you questioning this? There might be a good reason to question, supporting her or whatnot, but actually you do, and you agree, even if you don't agree with her end where she wants to go with her politics, you agree with her kind of course of action in a lot of ways. And it was just, it's just so out there. And I think this argument that it was just because of her is being laid bare as false, as all of a sudden the attention is turned to Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris, and it's the same thing, right?
Mhm.
There's some little thing that's wrong with them, and that makes them horrible. They were great, and they were the woman we would have voted for it because we didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton. But now, oh, we learned this thing, and now they're horrible.
Mhm.
And that whole kind of industry that has, just been directed at Hillary Clinton for the last decades is turning on, now focusing on these other potential, certainly potential presidential, candidates, but also just women in politics that right now have quite a voice and quite a position. And again, it's hard to get away from it. You just get inundated with negative stories and kind of innuendo. And I think that's the innuendo part is the tricky part.
Yeah, there was so much in this chapter of Hillary's about sexism in politics that was so fascinating to me. Like I said, I wish she had written a whole book on that. I wish she'd come back to it and write that whole book. Um, you know, she, one of the things that she talks about that made me sort of really regret what could have been is she says that she wishes that she had claimed her story as the story of the women's revolution. And I don't know if that would have worked. I don't know. She probably would have been ridiculed, whatever, but knowing now that she was going to lose anyway, I I wish that she had gone there. I wish that she had done that because I think it would have been important and compelling. And maybe these 4 million people who joined a secret Pantsuit Nation group at the last possible second, like, would have felt inspired to talk about it louder.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of really, I feel like it was a missed opportunity. And of course, we didn't know she was going to lose, and she was trying to balance all these different coalitions, and she was trying to hang on to men who might have been threatened by that, and all of that was true. But it was really inspirational to read her biography of going to law school and, being told by a professor at Harvard that Harvard didn't need more women. I mean, just so just important and interesting, and I felt myself longing for more of that, I think.
I agree, and I agree when she says that she wishes that she had claimed that story because that story in many ways is the story of women in America today still. I thought it was really interesting, Kelly and Megan, that you both said that you hadn't really experienced a lot of this because I have had many of the experiences that she discusses. She talks about how Bill lost the governor's race in 1980 because she still went by her maiden name. I One time my husband and I were in a very bad spot, and he lost his job, and we had to apply for food stamps. And I went down to the local office, social work office, and we sat there for 6 hours and we waited for our caseworker. And the caseworker looked at our IDs and treated me to a 20-minute lecture on how I was denying the joy that God had given me for that I could have this brand new identity as my husband's wife by keeping my last name. And I had to sit there and endure it because we were asking for food stamps. And if I argued with her or told her to mind her own darn business, I wouldn't get the food that I needed to live. So I have had experiences myself of being told that a choice that I made with my own name that has nothing to do with anybody else in the world except me and my husband is a terrible choice and then I'm a bad person for making it.